All right, we are connected for the Tuesday edition of the morning check-in. And as always, looking forward to connecting, sharing my 2 cents on a variety of subject matter. And yeah, it looks like the tariff tantrum is back in full force. And based upon what we've learned from last year's tariff temper tantrum, is that the end result of that forces nations to rethink their positioning in reference to holding large amounts of U.S. liabilities, aka our currency and the derivatives of it, bonds, treasuries, you name it. And so, seeing the current market activity with everything trending upward in a sense, is this the beginning of that second wave of a commodity surge that allowed us to see all-time highs in silver and gold and everything like that we witnessed last year? And so, don't know. It's too premature to really put that out there, but it's something worth thinking about because I got a feeling that this administration is in need of a new um, narrative slash trigger to get the commodity space as well as stocks and everything else trending upward, just so he could be able to say, look at everything is going great and this and that, whatever, whatever. And so we're going to talk about that a lot more. But before I move forward, thank you for blessing me with your presence. Let me make sure I'm flowing on all cylinders here, and then we're going to jump right into it. I have 5, 6 tabs open, all relevant to what we're experiencing. And more so, just want to put it out there and see what your thoughts are. Could this be that second commodity surge or not? That is something we're going to find out. And so, from yesterday's stream, when I talked about oil, clearly it's surging there because the price of Brent has gone up significantly since we spoke just 24 hours ago. And we know that's all centered around the Strait of Hormuz and the probability of the Yemenis deciding to cut off the other strait on the other side of the Saudi Arabia. So once again, a lot of predictions from a lot of credible sources saying that Brent oil prices in general is going to go a lot higher if this Middle East conflict is not resolved or there's some type of official agreement, which, as I said yesterday, I don't anticipate there being one. And so with all that happening over there in the Middle East region, what are we focusing on now? And based upon today's announcements, as was yesterday, tariffs. And so what better way to get people to pay attention to you, meaning, Donald Trump and everything that he wants to accomplish, other than imposing or threatening with tariffs? And so I realize a trend with the US. If you're considered a bad actor, you're labeled or you're hit with sanctions. So bad actors or rogue nations are hit with sanctions, but yet on the other side of that, they can't go to the extreme of calling everyone a bad actor. But if you're not operating in the US interest, you'll be labeled as a target for tariffs. And so we're going to talk about that a lot more. Okay, let's just jump into it and go along from there. So for those who are plugged in, depending on where you're watching, depending on where you're at in the world, depending on what's happening in your neck of the woods, feel free to share thoughts, ideas, suggestions. And as always, make sure you subscribe so you'll be notified, and then hit the bell and drop a comment. And so once again, I've seen posts. I do read the posts, the comments, whatever, and people say, Mike, I am subscribed, hit the bell, still don't get notified. So once again, it's one of the things where it's beyond my control. I've witnessed YouTube evolve in a not so positive way, and I'm seeing more content creators, those that even talk about happy-go-lucky stuff, they're experiencing some issues as well. So but as of right now, this platform is the best way to have a chance at reaching people, and so I'm going to continue to plug along there. Also streaming on Rumble as well, so they have a better way of getting to the actual subscribers. So yeah, just something in there. And then also always working on some things on my end. So I'm going to be putting out a another email list, even though I have one, but a more direct email list so people can get notified, especially if we go back to the late night call-in portions. And so I'm looking forward to doing that as well. So okay, so let me just get into it, not wasting more time. Okay, so I'm gonna go a little bit everywhere, but got to pay attention to this commodity surge, because it could be good and bad. It's going to be good for those that are positioned in commodities that preserve wealth, but it's going to be bad for those that are relying upon commodities, i.e., energy prices, because it's going to get costly. And so, whatever gains or appreciation in wealth that a person would feel from their assets ultimately, if our energy costs and everything to do with energy goes up, it's like if you feel like you're getting, wealthier from being a wise steward of your finances, if the cost of living go up as well, you're just basically going to be taking some of these gains and putting it in here to sustain yourself. So it's this seesaw action that is not going to be comfortable in the days ahead. And yeah, that's what it is. And that's why, not to, really harp on it too much, but as I say, regardless of what your thoughts are, what you believe, we are becoming a crypto, aka Bitcoin nation, just based upon the current stance of our government and their race for clarity, with the Genius Act being the stablecoin initiator, and then Clarity being the crypto and stablecoin guardrails that they're putting up. So you better believe, it's a part of your future, whether you like it or not. So, words to the wise, learn, understand, and have a strategy as to how you're going to navigate those waters, because our president does. And so this potential commodity surge is about to make our president wealthier beyond belief. So we got some stuff about that as well. So, okay, back to the subject at hand. Okay, so here is the Brent price chart. So from yesterday, when we literally like yesterday, I was talking to you guys and we were like right here. And so we were, I think it was, let me see, go back here. So this is over the weekend. Marco Rubio came out and tried to say something that obviously it didn't stick. And so Marco Rubio came out right about here. Marco Rubio came out right about here. It was like, oh yeah, it looks like Iran wants to make a deal. And then shortly thereafter, we obviously there was no deal talks, because Brent is right now at 91, hitting 92. And that's just the start potentially of this second wave of a price energy surge because of this ongoing conflict that cannot be resolved in a timely manner because of what's at stake. And this leads me to, this is off, I'm not on topic, but it's all relevant. And so with that being the case, we're going to witness obviously a higher energy surge. And so here's an article that came out a couple days ago that I didn't get a chance to talk about, but it said Goldman sends a fresh warning to the oil market. A quiet summer recovery just unraveled in the Strait of Hormuz, and the bank sees a familiar squeeze building again. So I won't bore you with this, but I'll just give you the gist of what they think and what they're forecasting. It says for a few weeks in the summer, the background noise had gone quiet. A deal between Washington and Tehran reopened the Persian Gulf. Tankers that had been trapped for months finally moved, and the fear premium that once had crude flirting with 120 barrel drained again. But that's all changed. And so literally what they're talking about now is the idea of, unless the strait opens back up in a timely manner, that 120 is just going to be the beginning. And so it goes on to talk about warnings and things that has not changed at all, and their forecasts still remain the same of where things are going to go. And so this is just something that, you got Goldman Sachs out here sounding the alarm. So it's going to be interesting, because it's good to say those that are closest to this administration know what they want to accomplish, and they know how they're going to accomplish it. And that's why I believe today's topic, primarily of tariffs, is front and center, because tariffs was an initiator of last year's commodity surge, because it forced China. And so when you come out last year and told China that, you're going to tariff them, put tariffs on all their goods to 150%, that definitely is enough to get everybody's attention. Tariffs gets nations' attentions. And so we're going to see more of that talk, because that is going to be important for this narrative of everything is good, the economy's booming, because this administration always need some way to point back to the stock market and or relevant things and say, look at how great things are. It couldn't be stronger, yada, yada, yada. And so tariffs to me looks like it's going to be that next narrative shift, because it puts pressure on nations where they have to then pay attention to Donald Trump and what he wants to accomplish again. And it starts with this. But before I get here, let me just give you a backdrop of the narratives and how we can assume that this tariff narrative will be used for a end of the summer, perhaps, commodity asset boom, because we're running out of steam when it comes to the AI space, because everyone knows that, in order to have this AI bubble continue to stay constant or inflate, there needs to be more liquidity. And right now, Kevin Walsh and the Fed has made it clear that there's no need to really make any move until it's required. Because when they make another move, it's going to be the beginning of many moves. And so, with that being the case, this is what I'm anticipating. So, what better way to give you a better layout and framework? And so here I put together just step by step, bit by bit, all the tariff narrative stuff that occurred last year at the beginning of Donald Trump's term and how he really kicked things off and how that was the initiator for the commodity boom. And so let me just give you the gist of it here. So bear with me here. It says, so second term Trump tariff war on the world. So literally key dates, announcements that shape the U.S. trade policy. And so as you can see here, I'll just thumb through it. You know, his campaign promise in 2024 was simple. He came out swinging, talking about pledging sweeping tariffs, 60% on China, 100% on Mexico, 20% on all other countries. So, and then a tariff in April. You know, Trump suggested tariff revenues could eventually replace income taxes. Remember last year how he was saying, you know, we're going to be bringing in so much cash that we can probably eliminate income taxes. And so all the MAGA people, like, oh yeah, you know, here we go, Nasera Jacera. He said he's going to remove the Fed. He's going to remove IRS. You be on the lookout. Yeah, here we are a year later. What happened? Okay, sure. And then so this is another thing. So these are all directly from Wikipedia, comprising a graphic to give you the narrative, the ongoing evolution of the narratives. Because once again, if everything is centered around propaganda, you have to use the old narratives to see how they've rebranded them to now where we're at now, and it helps you be able to predict the possible future. And so it says here, as you can see in the middle, it says Trump acknowledged tariffs might cause some pain for Americans, but said it will all be worth the price that must be paid. So this is, you know, what was anticipated last year. Then he appointed two other puppets here. I'll let you guys go from there. But here we go. I just want to focus on the metals and metal products. So February 2025, the probe ordered into copper. We all saw copper, which is right now it's at, you know, all-time high, you know, per tonnage. And then we got March 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports, including derivatives. All exemptions ended. The aluminum tariff raised from 10 to 25% in April. Aluminum tariffs. June, steel and aluminum tariffs increased to 50%. UK remains at 25%, expanding to major household appliances. Remember that last summer? You know, we're talking about microwaves and fridges. Anything coming from outside the country, you're going to have an excess tax on it. Okay, sure. July 2025 says 50% of tariff on copper imports effective August 1st. Excludes copper from import mines of Chile. And then we got tariffs on steel and aluminum imports to 407 additional products. And then as of right now, metal clarification says flat 50% on articles of metals, 25% on derivatives, 15% on selective industries and grid equipment, 10% on products made abroad, 100% on U.S. metals, minus give or take metal content. So literally from coming out hard, swinging, telling the world we're going to sanction you with the absurd numbers, it ended up settling to, you know, more moderate numbers. But we haven't heard nothing about tariffs since the Supreme Court basically made it so that he had to refund the tariffs back. But tariffs is back on the table. And here we are now with the most recent development of tariffs. And so Trump slaps 50% tariffs on Canada and currently vows to intensify trade talks. And so once again, tariff, you know, during the last UN, you know, was it the UN meeting or whatever, you know, Carney came out talking big and bad, made deals with China on allowing EVs to be sold, Chinese EVs to be sold in Canada. The U.S. don't like that because we being a bordering country, it's easy to go buy one of them BYDs or one of them other, you know, extremely efficient and cheap EVs and drive it across the U.S. border, which will allow the Chinese vehicles in our country, which they don't want because that's competition with Elon. And so the U.S. loves cornering the market with, you know, 3 or 4, you know, Rivian, Lucid, Tesla, and whatever else. But clearly monopolies, everything is centered around monopolizing things for Elon. But a little bit of stuff here, and then we'll get into some other stuff. It says U.S. President Trump has imposed 50% tariffs on a range of goods imported from Canada in retaliation for what he called unequal treatment of U.S. cars, dairy, and alcohol. So if you don't do business with us in a fair manner, we're going to tax you. And we'll force you to come to the table to negotiate. because Donald Trump is always about getting the best deal. Even these deals that he's trying to pursue when it comes to nuclear ambitions with Iran, it's not going to be something that will be fully resolved, because Iran cannot stop their nuclear ambitions, because that is a part of their agenda, from a philosophical, from a spiritual, from a natural pursuit, to where they're not going to give it up. And it's good to say, if they really wanted to get nuclear, they can easily just buy some nuclear bombs from their allies, either Russia and China, because it's clearly everything has a price these days. But it's not time for that. But it said everyday consumer items like wine, hockey sticks, and industrial goods such as cement are among goods targeted. And so what I saw was the most interesting about all this was the idea of taxing Canada because of the wildfire smoke. The fact he tweeted, we're going to, we should tax you because of the wildfire smoke. I'm like, whoa, that is crazy. But then again, it doesn't surprise me when it comes from this administration. So, okay, so that's just on the Canada front. So it's going to force Canada to come to the table. Okay. And then another one. Let me give you this one here. And so this is some fresh potential tariffs. So Trump reportedly set to announce fresh tariffs on dozens of countries. So why not just stick it to more people to cause more of a hoopla, to force other nation states to come to the table, so Donald Trump could try to secure a deal of some kind that ultimately reinforces dollar supremacy. All this is about dollar supremacy. Like, this is about keeping a dollar front and center, not realizing that if you're being threatened with more taxation on your goods, it disrupts commerce, and it forces you to really have to think, do you want to continue to support this type of behavior? And so as of now, you're forced to address this because it impacts your economy now. But then you're thinking long term, you have to start building away from the dollar. You have to start doing things that better positions your nation, so that a single person in an Oval Office can't threaten your entire population with the idea of tariffs, aka not bad actor sanctions. And so let's just read this a little bit. And so it says Donald Trump poised to unleash fresh tariffs on dozens of countries as soon as this week. The Financial Times reported this week his temporary 10% global tariff scheduled to expire on Friday. So literally everything I showed you from that graph is starting to dwindle down and come to an end. So now it's time to go to the table to negotiate again. And so it says FT said that the most immediate duties are expected to be on par with a 10% tariff currently in place, but the administration was also working on other investigations that could grant it the legal authority to propose higher duties. And so, give or take all the Supreme Court situation, he had to refund, billions of dollars. And mind you, he's still going out here. I haven't heard him say this in a while, but everybody's looking to, build here in America. We got all the manufacturers, Hyundai, Toyota, everybody's building plants here. We have pledges of, $8-9 trillion for the future, all that stuff. It's more so along the lines of the memorandum of understanding type of narrative, which means it's like, okay, there's some talks being done, there's probable negotiations, but there's nothing signed, sealed, and delivered, because all of those future, trillions of dollars that's going to flow in this country, wouldn't actually make it within this year. To be over a 3 or 4 year period. And mind you, he only has until January 20th, 2029, of which I don't anticipate none of those trillions of dollars actually coming into this country, building things out the way that he's predicting it. I think it's more so the hype and hope surrounding this, administration, and every administration, how they have to sell the American public on some type of like euphoric agenda that keeps people bought into the narratives. Okay, so the reason I say all this tariff talk is going to be, or could be good for the commodity boom, is the fact that based upon last year's activity, when all the tough talk was done, we saw gold and silver respond because China led the way in reference to basically trying to decouple the spot from the paper. And it's worked because it's caught America's attention to the point where now I'm in belief that the East and West are working together now to try to keep a calm, neutral response when it comes to the spot price, because the physical is beyond bananas. I've showed you graphs showing how much India and China are racing to secure as much physical as they can. And so literally by the US and the West, or by the East and the West coming to some type of agreement, it allows time to be uh allow time to pass by, basically. And the East is getting physical. Here in the West, we're pressing forward with clarity for the crypto space, because that's what the West is going to use to try to, portray the image of prosperity. Our nation is shifting from, it's going through an evolution of, and it's all centered around, the creation of the third central bank, Federal Reserve, whatever, being the most productive nation because we had manufacturing. And at that time, early 20th century, we had the most gold. People actually had gold in their possession. And then after World War I, World War II, gold removed. We know everything. Now we're on a fiat standard. And now from the fiat standard centered around centrally controlled collaborative efforts between the big banks and the Fed, now is transitioned to one in the form of the Genius Act, where stable coins will become the primary focus of the monetary pipeline, i.e. synthetic dollars, that will then support our fiscal irresponsibility in buying U.S. treasuries and debt easier and faster in real time type transactions. And ultimately, after this Clarity Act passes, then we're going to see the crypto boom that this administration needs to have in order to shift the narrative of prosperity from tangible real wealth, which China and other nations are hard pressed on securing for themselves, while we're being sold the digital illusion of wealth through crypto and everything like that. Just look no further than this administration's portfolio, which I've mentioned that in times past. So for a president who has reported to not own any real physical gold, but owns lots of crypto related projects, including Bitcoin, it doesn't take a PhD scientist to kind of predict where it would benefit him most for him to prosper in this wealth effect that he's trying to create. It's going to be in stocks with the companies that he's aware of and supporting, and in the crypto space. It's obvious. But it won't stop the idea of other nations being forced to rethink how they deal with the U.S. And so literally at the same time we had all the tariff tough talk, it's no coincidence that we also saw this wealth effect. So the time frame that I ended right here of last year, August 2025, all the tough talk, all the 50, 100% tariffs passed onto the world went hand in hand with the commodity surge in reference to gold, silver, and everything of the like. And so if all the tough talk was right here, which in my opinion was the trigger point that led to this out of the nowhere price surge that spooked everybody, it had the silver and gold community extremely excited. But then again, the U.S. government clearly was not wanting or ready for this, because mind you, if what I'm saying is true, that the next evolution of the wealth effect that this administration and this Congress wants us to believe is, if it's digital, they don't want gold and silver distracting and diverting attention off of this clarity. And so if all the tariff tough talk led to this, to the point where we got to $120 an ounce in January 28th, we haven't heard much about the tariff situation, because immediately after that, the Supreme Court struck down the legality of tariffs. And along with striking down the legality of tariffs, all that money was returned to sender. And then now, narrative shift, everything else between. The next event kicked off was, of course, the Middle East conflict up in here. And so since I believe the U.S. and Asia, Shanghai and all the big players over there, they came to some type of agreement around here, and then we've been trending down ever since, into where we're now at 58.99. But if Donald Trump's keep it up with this tariff talk, I believe the same thing could repeat again heading into the fall. So right now it's July, so there could be a possibility of, come August, just like I showed you on the graph, things starting to trickle back up, that $60 price ceiling in silver being broken, and then 60 to 62, 63, 65, 70. And then like last year during that price surge, I'm like, okay, it's exciting, it's new, we've never witnessed this before. But until we see $5, $10 days with silver, let's not get too excited. I remember in November, especially saying like, hey, something don't smell right. Let's not get too excited. Appreciate it, recognize it. Things are happening behind the scenes. And so clearly, I believe both parties, East and West, came into an agreement to allow this to happen in the meantime. So I believe the US was probably like, hey, since we're going to crypto, we're going to really pump the narrative of digital clarity, the Genius Act. We're going to try to prolong our, control the monetary pipeline by enhancing the speed and the functionality of it with distributed ledger technology, i.e., stablecoin usage. So we can offer that to the world through personal wallets and stuff like that. We're going to shift the brand instead of having it centrally controlled by just two entities, too big to fail banks, and the old, fractional reserve model, and the Fed being the primary issuers and supporter of the banks and all that stuff. We're going to allow institutions that are approved, accredited, or whatever. They create their own synthetic stable coins for the sake of backing them with U.S. liabilities, aka we're going to need a lot of people to buy our debt. So we're going to give institutions the ability to take depositors' funds, which are now tokenized and eligible to be used as collateral, just like the old system, to then convert them to synthetic stable coins that can be issued by all the big banks. And then they're going to go out and buy U.S. liabilities, bonds, treasuries, short-term, long-term, and make it appear as if there's ever increasing interest in U.S. liabilities. So that's the whole point of Genius. Clarity now will ultimately position the issuance and the use of, as far as yield. It can't be anything that the banks can't control, obviously. And it's about providing clarity for the consumers on the protections of their crypto holdings. So clarity is about the crypto holdings, who can hold them, what projects does what, yada, yada, yada. So that's what's happening right now in Congress. They're more concerned with clarity than they are gold and silver. So that lets me know where this is heading. Because you look at this tariff talk, and right now, as I'm speaking to you, we're seeing the possibles early morning. We'll have to just check in throughout the day, but $59 right now. So I waited until after market open here to see where we were heading. And so as you can see, literally in the Asian region and in the European region, there was a lot of excitement. We went from 57 up to 59.20. And then as we open up over here in the Western Hemisphere, we saw the market starting to calm down as it was closing in other parts of the world. But now, here we are now in the U.S., Crimex is starting to surge. And so I anticipated getting to 59 and then the lid being put on so people don't get excited to think that this is that surge. But can they keep doing this up until August, September, into primary time frame? We'll find out. But anyway, great. For those that realize and take advantage of manipulation, accumulation is essential. Accumulation is like breathing air nowadays. But anyway, okay, so I say all that because this is what's happening in the real world, and I believe it's in cahoots with the East and West Hemisphere agreement. Okay, but here is what's happening in reference to the U.S., and this is significantly important because this is the future they want us to focus on. So as I'm speaking to you, Bitcoin is doing something that it hasn't done in quite some time because the powers that be, the institutions that now control this 100%, were not ready. And so now, what's happening over the last couple of days that warrants the increase of Bitcoin? What's changed with Bitcoin? Absolutely nothing. But somebody at the top decided to capture attention because now it gives the Bitcoin community some energy behind it, and people, all the crypto people can go out and start, pumping their narrative saying that, this is the time, this is going to be, this is it, like, Trump, da 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 da. Okay, sure, but it's all a distraction to divert your attention off of other commodities, because no matter what, this is going to continue to go up as well as long as the Middle Eastern issues remain. So it's no matter what happens in the prosperity realm of feeling wealthier and the wealth transfer effect, ultimately it's going to be caught up in higher energy costs. So it's the people who don't have assets, that don't have nothing to draw from, will be the ones that feel the effect of this the most, because your wages in of itself won't sustain you when it comes to this. So that's why It's good to have many irons in the fire and be an individual that, don't rely solely upon a single source. Okay. But reason I say all that as far as Bitcoin is concerned, because mind you, whether you want to admit it or not, whether you like it, doesn't matter. The truth remains that Donald Trump is the president, the most influential person in the world, and he, by default, has been positioned as the most influential Bitcoin enthusiast by default because of his kids. His kids have set up things on his behalf that allows Daddy to sit in Oval Office and do whatever he wants from whatever angle. And as long as Donald Trump's Bitcoin portfolio increases in value, he's going to get, quote unquote, wealthier. And what president who seizes their net worth or their kids' net worth increase because of an entity that has already been determined to be the focus for our country, he's going to do things in favor of this. And so a man who has exposure to over 100 million in Bitcoin investments, and he has less than 1 million in physical gold, where do you think his allegiance will ultimately be swayed towards? It doesn't take, much to really assume what will benefit him most, because at the end of the day, it all depends on which side of the camp you fall on. Either this Make America Great narrative is for the people, or this Make America Great narrative is for distracting, diverting, and dumbing down the masses, which helps a Great Reset agenda. Depending on where you sway will determine, your viewpoint on this. And of course, as always, some people don't want to touch this subject. Some people don't want to think about the worst case scenarios. But no matter what, just remember this, there's people in higher places that are making decisions on your behalf, whether you like it or whether you even know about it. It's irrelevant, because when it comes to the grander scheme of things, we got 300 and something million American citizens that ultimately are forced to live under the decision making of individuals that we personally don't even know about their lifestyles, their decisions, their thoughts. They just say yay or nay when they go vote. And every bill that gets put forth is written by the same people who put money in their pocket, to where all of the Congress people happen to be uber millionaires on a government salary, but yet the agendas of the special groups and lobbyists are the ones that are being pushed. Hence the idea of clarity. Kathy's with Cynthia Loomis, who is the leading chairwoman for this. She's a Bitcoin enthusiast, talks nothing of gold. She even talked about we need to use the US gold to sell it to buy more Bitcoin. And the narrative is because we want to beat China. So, yeah, this is what it is, people. This is an alternative perspective to a reality that's being shaped in our very land and by the very same people that we call our elected officials. So, once again, it's just, my take on this. But I believe this tariff tough talk that's about to start again brings nations to the table, forcing them to have to respond. But then again, it pushes them away from the dollar greatly, in a greater manner, and it forces them to have to start diversifying. So obviously, you want to protect yourself from the same people that's causing the most problems. You got to go to gold and silver to protect your nation state, your personal finances, as well as your posterity. Because once again, this is the Great Reset unfolding, and it's confusing. But then again, it's it's real world events unfolding in real time. But anyway, just taking a minute to connect, share my 2 cents. I see some people in the chat. Appreciate you for blessing with your presence as always. People see my good people on Rumble as well. Thank you for blessing with your presence. The narrative I share here, it counters any and everything that you hear from mainstream. And if you agree or don't agree, leave a comment. If you are new, make sure you subscribe or hit the green mark, check mark, hit the bell, drop a comment, let me know your thoughts. But other than that, be blessed, be safe, people. And we'll be